Hello everyone, thanks for joining me today on a beautiful day in the Shropshire Hills, where today I'm going to try and get a photo that has eluded me for pretty much the entirety of my career as a photographer, and that is photographing bluebells in their prime. So I'm in a new location today. I'm in a new woodland, and it's not a new woodland, it's an ancient woodland, but it's a new one to me, because if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I moved house back in November, and all of the ancient woodlands that I would have typically gone to photograph, all the ones that I'm familiar with, are no longer really attainable to me. They're all a bit far away now. So this year is all about exploring new locations, and that's pretty exciting. I really enjoy finding new locations, but when it comes to woodland photography, familiarity is often the thing that leads to good photos, and that means today might be problematic. So familiarity is not something that I can rely on at the moment because, like I said, everything is brand new to me, and I find that photographers who are able to take truly exceptional woodland images are really prioritizing local knowledge. It's revisiting the same area time and time again for extended periods of time. That's the activity that leads to good woodland images in my experience. And yes, I have seen incremental improvements in my woodland images over time, but all of my favorite woodland images have come from woodlands where I have spent a lot of time getting to know the lay of the land, getting to know the seasonality, how conditions impact that environment. And there are certain subjects that I would revisit, certain trees, certain scenes. And I think that's something that I'm going to need to exercise here. It's that patience, it's that perseverance, and it's persistence for the long haul, because photography is definitely a long game. There's no quick wins to be had here. So that's why today, with these bluebell images, I'm not expecting to get anything half decent, but I am having a great time getting to know this really beautiful woodland. Although I've seen a few bluebells, I've come on a different path, and I'm now in an area of the woodland where there is no bluebells, but there's loads of silver birch trees, and silver birches are one of my favourite trees to photograph at all seasons. Obviously great during the autumn, but I find in late spring now we've got this new foliage which just looks really vibrant. And the composition that I found is of these two silver birches with the forest in the background, and because of the angle of the sun at the moment, it's kind of backlighting the silver birch trees, but the background is still in shadow, so there's an opportunity to get some great contrast. Now all I'm doing is setting up my tripod here, locking off the composition, because I'm really happy with the composition, but the light is what's going to make the photo, and that is something that is changeable. So I'm using the tripod just to kind of keep things as they are, and then I can just take a photo at various different intervals until I get one where the light intensity is kind of how I want it to be. So this is a lovely place to spend a little bit of time, completely unexpected, but I suppose that's the beauty of just coming out with a loose plan but very little expectation. So yeah, just going to wait for the light to do its thing. So that moment of contrast that we saw in that last photo is perfectly timed, really, because it's something that I did actually want to talk about in today's video, and it's a little bit of an opportunity to plug my newsletter. So in this week's newsletter, I shared a tip around spring photography, because the abundance of green in spring is something that can be quite difficult to manage, because woodlands in general are quite chaotic, and if everything is green, trying to kind of make any sense of that abundance of colour is quite difficult. And because of that, I always try to find moments of, I guess, contrast, whether that's contrast in light, contrast in form, or contrast in colour. And I guess that's why bluebell photography is so appealing, because that pop of blue just really breaks up the monotony almost of all the green. I mean, maybe monotony is the wrong word. But I like to share these tips in my newsletter, so if you haven't subscribed to it, absolutely free of charge to do so. Just use the link down in the description and you'll get a free Lightroom preset for signing up. But that's definitely something that I'm going to try and implement today, is just looking for opportunities to implement contrast in my images. And if you're struggling with photography during the spring, then just think about contrast and you'll definitely get some more favourable results. So one thing I've come to learn about myself in the last few years relating to my photography is that my photography is quite often led by my mood and by how I'm feeling. And that refers mainly to subject matter in terms of what I choose to photograph. For context, the last couple of weeks has been pretty full on in terms of travel and in terms of work. I've been down to London for a shoot, I've been over to Liverpool for a shoot, and I think those very urbanised environments, they're pretty loud and pretty full on for somebody who lives in the countryside. And I think after periods of exposure to the hustle and bustle, I suppose, of the modern world, I often find myself wanting to, I guess, retreat to places like woodlands, to the landscape, and that informs my photography. I then enjoy landscape photography in a more traditional medium because I find it really immersive and I find it very peaceful. It's an activity that is purely based on mindfulness for me. And I'm curious if anybody else kind of relates to that. Do you find that your photography is quite cyclical, and is it quite dependent on what else you have going on in your life at that time? So I found my first composition that includes bluebells, and whilst I'm not 100% sold on the composition, I think it's worth photographing. And that's a tip for anybody who is wanting to do photography and you're looking for a certain subject or subject matter to photograph. And I think the first photo is always just worth taking regardless of how great it is, because it helps you get your eye in for that subject matter, helps get the creative juices flowing. But there are a couple of elements in this composition that I actually quite like. So firstly, the thing that drew me to the scene is of course the bluebells and the path that leads off into the frame, but it's actually the crisscross of fallen logs and fallen trees in the scene that I think adds an extra dimension and an extra layer of interest, I suppose. So this is the kind of view that my camera is looking at the moment. So the things that are in my composition are this log that's just entering the frame from the right hand side. You've got the log that is kind of right across the entirety of the middle section of the image, and then there's another fallen log right in the background, and the image itself is anchored by these two trees on the left and right. Now I've included this rhododendron bush here because that actually adds some contrast to this tree trunk. It helps it stand out from the background a bit, and there's loads of great new foliage in the background which is just adding some nice vibrancy, nice bit of green colour. And because of the canopy, it's quite near the top, so the light is able to penetrate that, and it's adding some nice luminosity to the top of the frame. So that's kind of what I'm working with. A number of elements that I think are quite interesting. I think the balance of the shot is fine, but yeah, we'll see if we can better it. So I'll pop the image on screen. Let me know what you think. I'll tell you what, I am so glad that I did this today and just took the time to immerse myself back into nature. It's just something that I neglect from time to time. I almost forget the feeling of being here, because I think my photography, as with many people's photography, you know, we get pulled in different creative directions. It's something that I talked about in last week's video, and I'm naturally curious and I like to dabble in different forms of photography. But when I come to locations like this, and after spending a couple of hours in the woodland, just, you know, soaking up all of the sounds, just all of the sights, it's very, very restorative. And I think, as I mentioned earlier about just feeling like everything has been a bit frantic recently, and You know, with me spending a lot of time in cities because of work, it just further cements the fact that I need to make more time for this. And I think for anybody who is, you know, feeling a little bit maybe stuck in their photography, i.e. not really knowing what to shoot, maybe you're not taking photos that you feel particularly connected to, I would say my number one tip, and it's something that being out here today has really shown me, is think back to what initially made you pick up a camera in the first place. Because the thing is with photography is that often the inception of that hobby, that passion, it's often not purely led by influence. It's always led by your kind of instinct and by your taste at that particular time in your life. And for me with photography, you know, the thing that made me pick up the camera was being in the landscape and being in North Wales and exploring these types of locations. You know, that was what made me pick up a camera. And obviously since then my photography has evolved. But whenever I'm back doing the thing that I did at the beginning, before, you know, I did this for a living, before I had an Instagram account, before I had a YouTube channel, that's always the stuff that gets me fired up. And that's always the type of photography that I will indefinitely be connected to. So I think if you are feeling like you're at a bit of a crossroads, or, you know, maybe you're just in a bit of a funk with your photography, then whatever that thing was for you, whatever it was that made you pick up a camera, just go and photograph that. Even if it's only for a little while, if it's for a day, for a week, you know, however long you end up doing that for, just make time for it every so often. Because I think it definitely helps reignite your enthusiasm. And that's definitely what today has done for me. So that pretty much concludes this week's video. I think I've done a full loop of this woodland now, and it's been such a fantastic afternoon. I hope you've enjoyed coming along on this little outing with me. Like I said, a mixed bag in terms of photos, but not a bad day's work considering. You know, expectations were low, so the fact that I was able to even get the camera out the bag and find anything to photograph, I think is a win. So, as always guys, thank you so much for joining me today. If you did enjoy the photos, then do let me know down in the comments. Let me know what photos were your favourites, and if you think there are ways that I can improve on these photos. You know, always open to a bit of critique. That is the main reason for being part of a photography community, is to share ideas and to connect with like-minded people. And I would love for you to connect with the channel if you have found this video enjoyable. You can do that by hitting the subscribe button and ringing the bell to get notified of when new videos go live, which is every Wednesday without fail. I'll always let you know if there's going to be a week when I can't upload, you know, for things like work or life. But yeah, for the most part, trying to stay consistent, doing one video a week. I've managed to do that for the last over a year now, I think like 15 months or so. So, you know, really finding a flow with it, really enjoying making these videos. So if nothing else, do consider giving the video a thumbs up, just to maybe show your appreciation for my for my efforts. But yeah, I will leave it there for today. As always guys, always appreciate you watching. Thanks for coming along, and I'll see you next week for another video. Really excited for next week's video actually, but I won't give you any spoilers.